there, but it ended up cutting a really big hole in Section 230 itself, and then in some parallel laws that also got passed as part of this bill. And the effect of that parallel, of all this language that got changed, is Section 230 has gone from a sure thing that a platform can rely on to a very questionable thing. You know, as a lawyer, as an advocate, I'm not going to concede that Section 230 doesn't provide protection to an awful lot of intermediating behavior, but also as a lawyer who counsels clients, I look at that language and, you know, sometimes my advice seems to be run screaming, because I can see all the risk of it creates so many holes where a private litigant, the federal government, or even some state attorney generals can come after the platform if they think that the content you've intermediated offends those other statutes in some way, and they're so broad that they can catch an awful lot of information. So one of the things about SESTA FOSTA is that it was designed to quell any online content that related to sex trafficking, but the effect is that it's chilled any sort of, it has most certainly chilled any sort of adult content, including legitimate protected adult content, but it's also chilled a lot of not necessarily too adult content. So for instance, Craigslist took down its entire personal section because there's something where it's adult in the sense of grown-ups date, but it wasn't necessarily adult in anything more scandalous than that. But grown-ups date, and they're going to maybe exchange, you know, be provocative in terms of how they might try to attract each other in their ads. And Craigslist is like, we can't be in the business of moderating that, protecting it, or being on the hook if one of these posts happens to offend some state attorney general somewhere. Can't be in the business of took down the entire moderating that. Craigslist Personals is no more. It's a dramatic move, but it isn't an irrational move. There are a lot of other platforms, particularly those that have more grown-up type content, who are very, very worried about how they can continue to have any of that content. But realistically, the way the statute gets read, you know, it has some pretty broad reach. And so even platforms that are not necessarily subject specific and have all sorts of content, that it's a scary time for them. It is not as clear that Section 230 is giving them the backup that they had been relying on for the previous 20 some odd years.
Well, and it even has come into play with some of the recent headlines in Congress or congressional hearings with Facebook, and, you know, asking Zuckerberg if Facebook and all, like, if Section 230 provides protection.
It doesn't require that content be neutral. But I think there's a couple of things going on here. One is that people are really mad at Facebook. And so some of the optics is, hang on a second, Facebook likes this law? Well, if Facebook likes that law, let's get rid of it because we really want to hurt them right now. So if Facebook likes 230, let's get rid of Section 230. So I think there's a certain recklessness among regulators right now because there's so much antipathy towards Facebook. And that's unfortunate because Facebook should like Section 230, but it is not just Facebook that likes it or depends on it for business critical or in any way other form of critical communication ability. You did ask about harm, and you know, some of the other harm is that there are a number of people who let's be frank, some sex workers, they're out there. You may not like it, you may not like that prostitution exists, etc., but it happens. And basically one of the things that can happen is either it happens on the streets where women are extremely vulnerable to being exploited by middlemen or killed by Johns or something like that, versus having internet platforms available to them has given them a level of safety because it's given them a sense of agency over the work they take, the terms that they take it on, who they take it with. They get to sort of filter it. There is essentially already a body count where when you take away the ability to for these sex workers to be able to use the internet, it drives them to the street, and there's already homicides that have resulted from platforms not being available to them anymore. There's also some data that when Craigslist took down its adult section years ago, because they used to have a far more adult area available, it upped the entire homicide rate for women in general. So you asked what has happened. The answer is censorship, but actually that pulls the punch a little bit. The answer has been homicide. That covers some of that answer. Getting back to the neutrality issues, there's some interesting stuff to talk about there, but I think people get confused about the optics. Nobody wants vulnerable people to get injured, but that prompted the SESTA-FOSTA to pass in the first place, even though a lot of people were saying it's going to blow up. It's not going to have the effect of protecting people. It's going to make these vulnerable people more vulnerable, and it's had that effect.
Yeah, well, and one of the things we will have to pick all that back up right after this commercial break.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
45 years of experience is behind the most trusted name in auto transportation. Passport Transport, the first and finest today. That's why Passport Transport is the preferred auto transport for major auto manufacturers, concours, museums, tours, and collectors, and should be your choice from across the state to across the country. When you have the need, go to PassportTransport.com and enjoy the peace of mind referenced experience will give you. Passport Transport.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to Buzz Off with Lawyer Liz on America's Web Radio. Catch us each Wednesday from 2 to 3 Eastern on americaswebradio.com or the Lawyer Liz podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and your favorite podcast streaming services. Talking today, I guess we can call this someone almost sexualized